Part 113. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 1134. Each of these children was too dirty. Yanj used the dust cleaning method to keep these children clean. In the morning, they were teaching children to read. Diwen Shangxian sat and looked at her. The more I look at it, the more I doubt whether this is the demon girl who shouts and kills everyone in AncientChina. She seemed different from everyone's imagination. Within 3 days, the wealthy businessmen and officials who had been given danger by Yanj also scooped up food and clothing. The surrounding villages learned that the children sent to Yanj could have enough food, and they sent all their children one by one. However, in a few days, there were more than 100 and 200 children in this small place. Yanj took materials locally, and simply established the children's base camp on the hillside at the end of the village, so that those in the hands of the business housekeepers helped her build a relatively large college together. The words are flying and dancing, and the college is named Yuan College. Diwen Shangxian was indifferent at that time, but at that time he always stood coldly at the gate of the college, staring at the 4 big characters on the plaque. The words she wrote were pretty good. In the name of the fairy, Yanji, there is no need to publish hero posts, and scholars will come in, and Mr. Jiaishu will not have to search for them. Yanj entrusts the affairs of the college to Diwen Shangxian for management, mainly because he understands that he is now no different from mortals, so give him some work to kill time. She went out from time to find some medicine for him. However, in just over 10 years, Diwen Shangxian ate countless elixir, and also worked with her countless times. She used to pick up the yang and make up the yin, but now she is doing it for him. However, no matter how many practices she gave him, those practices would disappear from his body in less than 12 hours. Diwen Shangxian did not expect that he would become a waste. But now he has to face the situation. During the day, he needed to be a cold-faced principal in the college. He didn't have much time to think about these things. At night, he often closed her eyes and couldn't sleep. What can I do if I can't cultivate the fairy again? He can't hold her back. Will she return to Xiaoxian realm in the future and become the demon girl everyone yells and kills? Yan Ji certainly did not know that the host Diwen Shangxian would still have this idea of being a waste. This time, she went to the World of Warcraft forest where the people in Xiaoxian talked, and she was injured while fighting with Warcraft. Although she could cure the trauma herself, the internal injuries could not be eradicated. Even if he was in her arms, she couldn't fall asleep because of chest pain. I was thinking of waiting for a while to meditate. He couldn't bear his arms, and she could feel that he wasn't asleep. This big brother, the beauty is pregnant, is it possible to be dissatisfied? Yan Ji pushed him gently. Fujun, what are you thinking? Her husband was screaming, but every time he heard it, he still felt distorted. Diwen Shangxian's body was stiff, but she wanted to continue pretending to sleep, but she also knew that his breath was unstable, and she would surely be aware of it, so she said, do NT go out and find any herbs again? With a clue, I want to retreat for a while. Yanj, do you have any auxiliary medicine? Diwen Shangxian's hand touched her smooth back without knowing it. No, if I retreat, will you help me protect the law? After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 1135. Of course Yanj said, although you failed to help me protect the law and advanced my failure, I have forgotten this kind of thing, so I will not take the opportunity to retaliate. You will protect the law despite your retreat. Diwen Shangxian, she didn't say it was okay. When she said that, he felt that she might not take the opportunity to retaliate. Yan Ji laughed lowly. Fujun, I'm kidding. You can shut up and I will protect you, unless I die, no one can disturb you. The 2 words of the husband were called out by her, soft and waxy, and every time he could make his belly warm, and his numbness spread all over his body. Giwen Shangxian pursed her lips, but still asked, do you really treat me as your husband? Yan Song, is the husband still fake? When he heard her, he didn't know what emotion it was. He actually wanted to kill her. She was stupid enough to treat him as a trusted husband. Suddenly he felt guilty, so he hesitated for a moment and said, in the future, I will return to Xiaoxian realm, and you and I will hold a ceremony of double cultivation. I will protect you, but you cannot be as before acting. Yan Ji's head froze over his chest. Do you want me to be good? Okay. I will protect you in the future. Giwen Shangxian held the hand of Yanj. In the darkness, the corners of his lips were tilted, and his open eyes couldn't hide the joy. Demon, then you have to talk, but you can't. The other men have the slightest end. Singing and laughing, I will only be with you in the future. Giwen Shangxian echoed her words, only feeling sweet in her mouth and eating honey. He closed the retreat. In fact, he wanted to repair Dan Tian's broken body by his own ability, and didn't want her to run around because of his affairs. She thought he didn't know, but he knew that every time she came back from the outside, she was unstable and clearly hurt. Her cultivation is different now. He needs all the heart to find medicinal materials. Instead of keeping her out of danger every time, it's better that he retreat by himself. She can also take advantage of this period to restore her cultivation. 4. Giwen Shangxian's retreat was in a stone room on the side of the academy, where Yanj laid out the formation and prohibition. She stayed outside the stone room again. But Giwen Shangxian's retreat this time, he didn't even think that it would be 100 years. In the centuries, he was no different from before he closed his eyes, but he left Shishi but found that there was something wrong outside. In the eyes is a barren field. There is no Giwen college, and there are no small villages built one after another. Everything you look at is barren without humans. What about her? Wouldn't he be able to bear the loneliness while he was in retreat, and went to the Xiaoxian realm to make trouble? Giwen Shangxian was very anxious. After a century of retreat, his Danshan meridians have been repaired. Although it has not yet reached its peak, he knows that it won't be long before his cultivation will surpass the past. His arms had grown out, and when he was out of the customs, he changed his usual white clothes. But when she came out, she didn't even see her face. Divine consciousness swept around, and finally discovered the mortal village outside Bailey Kai. His body flashed, and the next moment appeared in that mortal village. The village is small, and the gods of Giwen Shangxian swept away, and found that there are several elderly people in the village. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 1136. Giwen Shangxian inquired about it one by one, only to know that 50 years ago, a very large monster came around the Giwen Academy, and the fire sprayed from his mouth burned everything around. The fairy guarding at Giwen Academy died in order to fight the monster. Where the fire in the monster's mouth blew, no grass grows. To commemorate the fairy, in all nearby villages, there are town evil stone statues about the fairy. Giwen Shangxian looked at the so-called fairy stone statue of the village, which is similar to a monkey. I deeply feel that this fairy is indeed able to suppress evil. If she knew she had been carved like this, she would cry. He wanted to laugh, but couldn't laugh. After a moment of silence, I touched my hand, and the stone powder flying around where my finger touched, but after a while, this ugly monkey statue was 9 points similar to her appearance. It was like a lifelike statue. Go back. Is she dead? Giwen Shangxian walked all the villages 100 miles away, but whenever she had a stone statue, he would be recarved. Is she dead? He asked in his heart over and over again. Is she dead? He had walked many times along this place, and indeed did not find any traces about her. Is she dead? He didn't believe it at all. In this mortal land, how can there be monsters that can spit fire? The monsters described by mortals one by one are all like four. Giwen Shangxian could not think from these people's words that this monster is a few levels of Warcraft. But he felt that she must not die so easily. How could she die in the hands of a Warcraft horror that made everyone in the Xiaoxian world gritted her teeth and smelled frightened? Giwen Shangxian couldn't find her in this mortal world, and went all the way to Xiaoxian realm. Thinking that maybe after she killed that world of Warcraft, she left him and returned to Xiaoxian realm, and then picked Yang everywhere to repair the evil. But I entered the Xiaoxian realm and asked for months. Giwen Shangxian didn't hear about the demon girl. The various legends about the demon girl have been broken for hundreds of years. So she didn't return to the fairyland? Then where did she go? Died. He didn't believe it at all. Giwen Shangxian remembered that Curry in Jianzhong seemed to have a gossip chart that can look at past and present life. He couldn't possibly find her with that gossip chart. Giwen Shangxian wandered for a few months and did not return to his own Xianling, but returned to Jianzhong first. The ancestor of the sword ancestor did not expect that his old ancestors had returned. He did not dare to search for the gods and found out that Giwen Shangxian was injured. Although he is the sovereign of the sword sovereign, he has seen Giwen Shangxian a very limited number of times. As a superfan of the Giwen Shangxian, the sword sovereign welcomed him with excitement when he entered the door. Go up. The little excited look almost fell to his knees and kissed Giwen Xianzun's smelly feet. In front of these little fans at home, Giwen Shangxian also immediately entered the state of the past, the joyless, angerless, and cannibal world of fireworks. Is there a gossip chart in Curry that can look at past and present life? Jianzhong's sovereign nodded his head busily. There is such a thing, but this thing can't be activated, it is just a display. Speaking, the sovereign of the sword sovereign had taken Giwen Shangxian to his treasure house. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 1137. This gossip chart needs to be controlled by people who pass through the circle of immortality. And in the whole world of immortality, there is no immortal person who has reincarnation. The gossip is placed in the treasure house, and it is a stepping stone. Giwen Shangxian also knew this. But even so, Giwen Shangxian still put the large reincarnation disk in his own storage space. Reincarnation, he can too. Giwen Shangxian took the gossip chart and returned to his own fairy ridge. This retreat is another century. He discarded himself and practiced in a reincarnation path and resumed his cultivation. For 100 years, he was a little successful, and finally reached the advanced stage. The reincarnation advancement is also a reincarnation. Before the advancement, Giwen went down the mountain and went to find her trace. However, only 200 years ago, there was very little news about her, and almost no one remembers it. There was a demon girl in the Xiaoxian world who harmed the second generation of immortals. Is she dead? He certainly would not believe it. Retreat again, reincarnation. Reincarnation is the continuous advancement in reincarnation. The body dissipates, and it becomes a baby who has forgotten the past life, experienced the sorrows and joys of the world, and it is also the time to remember the progress of the past. Giwen Shangxian, a steadfast-minded person, even if no one guides his reincarnation, he has successfully advanced. After advancing, he could hardly wait to return to Xianling. The numerous transmission notes of the sovereign sword lord lined up in the stone room outside his retreat. Giwen Shangxian opened a little. But now there are witches in chaos, and they have brought countless World of Warcraft attacks on the Immortalists. The people in the immortal world have organized the World of Warcraft battles again and again, and they still have no obvious effect, so I would like to invite Yuan Shangxian to appear. Giwen Shangxian has experienced countless years in the past 50 years, and naturally knows that this world of Warcraft is not incompatible with Xiaoxian realm. But he is no longer the world's most supreme Giwen Shangxian. He is now in the reincarnation path. In the later stage, the reincarnation path may still kill the quartet, but now he has just entered the first stage and has no lethality. Therefore, regarding the fierce lords of the sex sect, he asked him out of the mountain to deal with the demon girl's voice, and he could only pierce them one by one. Standing in front of the stone room, he thought for a while, and went to the mountain where the Lord of the Sword was located. The deity is in reincarnation regardless of the excited little star of the sex sovereign, Giwen Shangxian said indifferently. The face of Zongzong's face froze, and his smile froze. The ancestor of his sword, the first person in Kendo, and the strongest Shangxian in the entire Xiaoxian world, even gave up Kendo and entered the samsara? How is this possible? However, this kind of thing seems to be something that the ancestors could do. Through reincarnation, no one has succeeded for thousands of years, but the ancestors of his own family have advanced so easily, it is simply superb. The admiration of the sex sovereign to his old ancestors admired the worship again like surging rivers. But he hadn't had time to praise the old ancestor good Niuex, the old ancestor turned and left. Giwen Shangxian, I'll go one step further. It is as easy to say advanced as peony. The sovereign of the Sword Emperor did not kneel and call the ancestor mighty. But immediately, he reacted and hurriedly called Giwen Shangxian, old ancestor, can the gossip fate be counted against the witch now? After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 1138. Giwen Shangxian thought about it, this can be there. But he didn't want to waste time on fortune-telling, he wanted to find the demon girl. However, looking at his junior gaze, he nodded, I'll try. The words are off, and the big gossip life plate has been summoned out. This life plate is also a wonderful work. It can only be enlarged but not reduced, and the structure looks plain. It is really like a stone-polished grinding disc. Giwen Shangxian started grinding discs a bit. The whole person's face was dark. Seeing the face of his old ancestor, the sex sovereign also sank and asked carefully, will this fairyland and world of Warcraft lose, will the fairyland lose? Giwen Shangxian, your royal sword, take the deity to Xin Shui now. Xin Shui is the place where the two armies of the immortals battle. The ancestor of the sword ancestor did not know why his old ancestors changed his mind. He had no doubts about the words of the old ancestors, and immediately summoned his sword to bring the old ancestors to the river. He was so excited when his sword carried the ancestors. Giwen Shangxian, why is your sword shaking all the time, do you have internal injuries? The sword sex stammered and answered, my sword, it likes to shake. He couldn't even control himself, let alone a sword. In the future, his sword will be his lifeblood. The Lord of the Sword ancestors personally guarded the sword, but it was only a dying effort to reach the prosperity of the two armies. The tide of Warcraft did not know where it came from, and was directed by the witch, attacking in A. Everyone in the fairy world wanted to capture the thief and capture the king first. However, those Warcraft confess the witch as an ancestor, with 3 layers inside and 3 outside protects the witch. Everyone in the fairyland could not see the face of the witch, let alone approach her. In everyone's mind, this witch must be an ugly monster like a spider. When the sex sovereign took Giwen Shangxian to go, it was just when the two armies just fought a half-time break. Giwen Shangxian reached the realm, before he could run towards the Warcraft army, he saw all the people in the immortal looking at him in a row. Do these people regard him as a life-saving Buddha? Giwen Shangxian was ashamed. He really doesn't have the ability to cage Xiaoxian people under his wings. Although he was a little guilty, he didn't show it on his face. He just bowed his head indifferently to the crowd, and then turned towards the Warcraft army. I don't know who was crying with a cry behind him, Shangxian, don't. Then all those in the immortal world broke down on their knees, and some even cried, Upper Immortal, we would rather die than humiliate you. Giwen Shangxian, what was insulted? Or do these guys think that he can't beat the witch like a single gun, so he feels insulted? Of course he never thought of fighting her. He took another step out. The howling behind us is even more, Shangxian, it is our incompetence that has dragged you down, you don't have to go. Shangxian, you have made such a sacrifice for the entire Xiaoxian realm, and everyone in the fairy realm will always remember you. Giwen Shangxian. Could these people feel like he was going to die with that witch? He really didn't have the capital to share with that demon girl now. He continued to move forward. At this time, the Lord of the Sword Lord heard the voice, Old ancestor, the witch just said that as long as you are willing to be her male pet, she will make the Warcraft army return to the forest of Warcraft, and never enter the cultivation world. Ancestor, don't be fooled by her, don't go any further, come back soon. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 1139. Giwen Shangxian. He walked faster. There were wailing and crying behind him, but he was a little happy. Not only did he recognize her, she even recognized him. Listening to someone behind me shouting, we can't live like this, and fight with these animals / raw. Giwen Shangxian. He turned his head and motioned everyone to be quiet. If one can exchange the deity for the stability of repairing the immortal world, the deity is very willing. This battle of immortals has killed and injured too many people. The deity does not want any more casualties. Go back. When everyone heard this, they wept even more. 11 Shangxian is indeed Shangxian, and his heart is so kind. Giwen Shangxian was afraid that these guys would pull him. After all, he is now doing this, and he really can't move freely among these people, so he rushed into the Warcraft group faster. Those Warcraft spontaneously made way for him. The witch standing on the back of the largest Warcraft, she extended Bai Nun's hand to him, come up. The beast tide of Warcraft faded away, and she was wearing a turquoise forest clothing and a wreath on her head, like a forest elf. Giwen Shangxian stood still and just looked up at her. The beast tide receded, and this witch who couldn't even see a piece of clothing was standing on such a high level of Warcraft's head, they just couldn't see it. This witch is not the same as the ugly 8 weird they imagined, but she is still a woman who is taken down by its glory. Most of the Xiaoxian realms are handsome men and women, and there are many beautiful people who are particularly attractive. But, like this witch, there was no one who wanted to stick her eyes to her at a glance, and even wished to seduce her at her feet to please her. Almost immediately, those who cultivated the heights knew that the witch was different, but they couldn't look away and couldn't even make a sound to awaken their witch-obsessed juniors. Looking up at Yan's Giwen Shangxian, his neck was almost broken, but she still couldn't see her jumping from Warcraft to hug him. She had to whisper, "You're standing too high." He had previously fortune-telling, but now he doesn't have much cultivation, and his aura is depleted. Now he has a hard time jumping high. Words of song, wipe. Before long, her arms stretched out so long that she felt sore, and thought he was not willing. Gai Xiangxian grabbed his hands empty, and Giwen Shangxian took the side of Yanj out of thin air. Yanj took his hand, intertwined with his fingers, got close, and kissed him on the cheek. Everyone in Xiaoxian realm was instantly awakened from the beauty of the witch, and also messed up in the wind and wanted to violently kill the witch. Their immortal realm is supreme, and their returning gods are up. They haven't even touched their own fairy on a piece of clothing, how can they be so tarnished? They are going to fight this witch. However, before they acted, they listened to the witch and said, "Fujun, I haven't seen you for many years, but you look a lot younger." Even if the voice is not loud, everyone is very clear-minded and listens to this very well. This witch actually called the fairy as her husband. Giwen raised her eyebrows, and her eyes fell on Yan Ji. He didn't expect that she would no longer do the work of picking up the yang and replenishing the yin, but started to do this kind of thing that is against the immortal world. During his 50 years of experience, he has also participated in the fight against Warcraft, and those where Warcraft has been, it is not too much to use charcoal to paint. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 1140. After the idea of Giwen Shangxian's heart rejoiced, it became a huge disappointment and anger. Hate that he was so confused by her rhetoric that he did not kill her that day. Hate that he had done that kind of thing with such a cold-hearted woman. He was full of anger, but those anger were blocked in his throat. He can't beat her. She's obviously better than before. And he abandons his practice, and now he still does not have much lethal reincarnation. He stood here, only to find himself ridiculous. But he couldn't laugh. He looked up and looked at the immortal practitioners, who said, "Have restlessly and go home." The woman beside him laughed at this time. The low laughter became clearer and more beautiful, but his heart was angry. This demon girl, this demon girl. He thought she was not bad by nature, and thought she was good too. But how could she intensify such a thing? Those who die are human lives? Giwen Shangxian couldn't help hating her, she just grabbed her hand hard. Yan Ji raised his eyes and looked at him, with a long whistle, the big Warcraft wings at the solace of the feet spread out, whistling and flying to the sky. This world of Warcraft is really big and its wings are bigger. The cultivators raised their heads and watched this big world of Warcraft gradually disappear into sight. Giwen Shangxian and Yanj stood together. In some ways, handsome men and women were quite pleasing to the eye. But at this moment, everyone is thinking, can their gods kill the witch? Or will it really become the witch's male pet? How many male pets does that witch have? They are more wronged. The big Warcraft flew into the forest, and the top of a big tree fell down. There was a huge tree house on the top of the tree. Yanj pulled Giwen Shangxian to stand on the terrace of the tree house. Giwen Shangxian glanced coldly. When the demon girl lived in that village, her eating and dressing were extremely delicate, but when she looked at the crooked cover of the wooden house, she said from the terrace that there were no decorations in it. "I didn't sleep on the bed." He did not believe that she had lived in such a place for hundreds of years. As soon as he looked up and asked, Yanj was close, kissed his lips, his arms and feet were folded, and he rolled over and pressed him to the roof. Giwen Shangxian. He doesn't even have the ability to struggle. Although he is not willing, he can only be forced to bear it. Of course, do NT forget to check her carefully if there are any traces left by others. This uproar lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. With such noise, when a steady stream of aura entered Giwen Shangxian's body, he realized afterwards that the physical condition of the demon girl didn't seem right. The strength of the two people is too different, but fortunately, his consciousness is very strong, so after a little hesitation, Giwen Shangxian consciousness probed into her body. The song that keeps squinting, she opened her eyes at this time, and smiled at Gigi Yuanxian. "I'm advanced, but the strange method and the power of impatience make my body radiate all the time. In order to make those Warcraft fans estrus, I have been unable to suppress their mania in recent years." She slender hands and stroked his face, sighing, "Shangxian, I have created many sins over the years. If you want to kill me, now is an opportunity, I will not resist." The words closed and his eyes fell into his arms. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gongwei Pang. Chapter 1141. Giwen's lips were tight, her hands resting on Yanj's back were still. In just a few words, she instantly understood why there was such a war between immortals and Warcraft. Presumably, at the beginning, Warcraft was frantic, and it provoked people in the immortal world. Gradually, people in the immortal world besieged World of Warcraft, discovered her existence, and then wanted to kill her, a witch who can make Warcraft obey orders. He remembered that when he first started to Immortal, he killed an indomitable non-doing indignation with great anger. The sorrow was not repented until death, and even the grief of gnashing his teeth shouted, "If you can choose, whoever is born is an evil person." He used to disagree with this statement. He felt that there are countless alternatives in his life. What he chooses, he will live. But now holding her in her arms, she remembered the words that he had forgotten to the corner. If she could give her a choice, would she prefer a life like that in Giwan College? Su is because Xiaoxian has been alone on his own journey. Giwan Shangxian is not a very expressive person. Even though he has a lot of emotions in his chest at this moment, he has always kept his lips silent. It wasn't until his emotions calmed down that he asked her, "Is there any way to solve this?" Yanj looked up and smiled at him, smiled, and pecked his red lips and red face. "You, Shangxian, only you can help me through this period." He reacted to her full-eyed eyes, and afterwards the reaction came to her meaning, "Can the double cultivation be solved?" Yan Ji nodded, "Yes, it can be solved by double repair with Shangxian." Giwan Shangxian's blush was even redder, but Yanj approached him and said, "Can you continue?" Giwan Shangxian: "No one can be ground for 3 days and 3 nights, I'm afraid I can't continue. It's almost numb. If you continue to grind it like this, the iron rod will have to be ground into a needle." But facing her sullen expression, he secretly gritted his teeth and said, "Yes." In order to repair the lives of all the immortals, he worked hard. Until the second advent of Gaixian Shangxian, the smell of Yanj had not dissipated. Giwan Shangxian advanced to start reincarnation. He could not figure out where he would be born, and if he did not advance after reincarnation, he would not be able to restore his memory and come to her again. How to do? He finally knew what it meant to dig a pit and bury himself. Reincarnation can't be delayed, even if Giwan Shangxian repeatedly told her, she was still uneasy. Sure enough, his second advanced completion was another century later. When he recovered his memory and went to look for her in the cabin of Wow Forest, he could not find the woman. He knew that this woman had lied and lied for a long time, and he should not believe that she would wait for him to return. Giwan Shangxian stood indifferently on the rooftop of the wooden house, sacrificing her reincarnation ritual, and calculating her trail. But in a moment, it was already calculated. When she found her location, Giwan Shangxian was shocked. This demon girl was in Jianzhong. Wouldn't she bring Warcraft to Sword Sect again? Giwan Shangxian hurried away towards Jianzhong. But at Jianzhong, Giwan Shangxian's consciousness swept away, and she did not notice her. The gossip chart clearly showed her position in Jianzhong. Giwan Shangxian went directly to Jianzhong's lord. "You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After my death, the villain blackened again." Author, Ben Gong Wei Pang. Chapter 1142. Giwan Shangxian, the ancestor of the Sword Sect, has been taken away by the witch more than 100 years ago, and has almost disappeared in the Xiaoxian world. The Lord Sect of the Sword thought that he would never see his ancestors in his life, and he did not expect to see the ancestors standing in front of his stone room when he looked up. Although an old sword ancestor wanted to run into Giwan Shangxian's arms and excitedly rushed, he resisted with restraint. "Old ancestor, are you back? You, how are you? Have you been injured? Have you?" Was there any interrogation by the witch strong girl, but the last sentence of the interrogation did not dare to ask. I've just returned from advanced Goyuan. Shangxian said, what's the big deal in Zongmen? Jianzhong's sovereign quickly shook his head, no, nothing. It's nothing, nothing big. It's not right, it seems like a big thing for my ancestor to return. The sovereign of the sect of the sword had no choice but to speak. He had a lot of questions to ask his ancestors. Fortunately, he was still afraid of the ancestors' magnificence, and could only ask euphemistically, once, you come back this time, don't you go? What? Something. The sect sovereign was originally okay. When asked by Giwen Shangxian, his head flashed, and he immediately smiled and said, one of the new disciples in Zongmen this time is as old as the ancestor. I did accept the apprentice. I see that the apprentice was very talented, and the man was very clever. Would it be better if he accepted it? Giwen Shangxian glanced at the Lord. The reincarnation path he is repairing now is not unknown to the suzerain. At this moment, letting him accept his apprenticeship is to leave a legacy for Xianling. Although he was unwilling to accept the disciples, Gigi Shangxian nodded, I'll see. The inheritance of Xianling really shouldn't be broken here, especially he is practicing reincarnation. Those disciples who are new to Shanmen will all learn the basic technique of bleed air in Shanmen Square. The sect sovereign took Giwen Shangxian to the square. It is not necessary for the suzerain to point out that Guiyuan Shangxian saw the disciple with Bing Lingen at a glance. This demon girl. She even pretended to be undercover and entered Jianzhong. The moment Gui Shangxian saw Yan Ji, although his heart gritted his teeth, he was more excited. It's really easy to find nowhere to break the iron shoes. Seeing Giwen Shangxian's gaze has always been on the words of the song, the Lord of the Sword sect exaggerated the new disciple. Seeing that Giwen Shangxian did not refuse or refute, he knew that this matter was settled. The suzerain also wanted to discuss with Giwen Shangxian whether to come to Jianzhong's apprenticeship ceremony, whether to put that disciple into the gate during the apprenticeship ceremony. When Giwen Shangxian fell from the air, he fell in front of the new disciple and said, let's go with me. From now on, you are my disciple of Xianling. This is too direct. But it also made the sovereign very happy. The inheritance of Xianling is the capital of the entire Jianzhong as a leader in the Xiaoxian world. Giwen Shangxian words fell, turned, and left. After taking a few steps, I realized that the words behind him had been following him in small steps and had to slow down. Although he walked ahead indifferently, his consciousness looked at her. She didn't have a little bit of cultivation, she seemed to have just deflated into her body. No wonder he didn't find her in Jianzhong, but her body was like a new one. Except for that face, there was no smell he knew. However, this is definitely her. At first glance, he can know that it is her. After my death, the villain blackened again. Author, Ben Gong Weipang. Chapter 1143. Out of the square of Shanmen, on the back road of Yushan, when she saw her stumbling, Giwen Shangxian offered his cauldron and said, come up. The cauldron was more than 3 meters above the ground. Yan Ji looked up at the cauldron and whispered, I can't make the sword yet. Naturally, you cannot jump into the cauldron. She didn't even have anyone around. How dare she pretend? Giwen Shangxian frowned slightly, but didn't speak. He jumped out of the cauldron, grabbed her waist, and hugged her together. Yanj didn't get out of his arms, she nestled in his chest with her hands, her arms around his waist. Jiao Jiao said, it's too high, I'm afraid. This demon girl. Her treehouse is taller than this. Sometimes 2 people are rolling around on the rooftop, and they almost fall down. I have never seen her shouting. Despite this thought in his heart, Gigi Shangxian slowed down and asked her seriously, what's going on with your body? Why is Jianzhong here? I don't know, Yanj said, I lost my advanced level and opened my eyes to the existence of such a little cultivation now. Fortunately, I am a rare ice spirit root, so I came to Jianzhong to learn. Giwen's brows frowned slightly. Why didn't you wait for me in the wooden house? Yanj, who knows if you're still alive? I can't wait there all the time, and I want to advance. I have to go to a safe place. What this said is really heartless and heartless, although Goyu and Shangxian listened to anger, but could not refute it. Instead, Yanj Huan said on his neck, Fujun, why are you back to the mountain gate now? Is it difficult to practice reincarnation? Or is your talent too bad? In the whole world of cultivation, no one is better than him. He said with a stern face. Reincarnation said, so far I have achieved success in cultivation, only me. Yan Ji stared up at him. From the moment I entered Jianzhong, everyone praised my talent and said that I was better than Jianzhong's talent. Giwen Shangxian saw her look of pride and stubbornness. Her heart softened and said, well, your talent is particularly good, better than mine. Yanj snorted happily and proudly. The song of the refining period has just been taught by Giwen Shangxian. In less than a century, Yanj is already the most powerful young generation in the Xiaoxian world. Turning from the screaming and witching sorceress turned into an enchanting world, everyone is jealous and jealous to look up. This turn is actually very rigid. But he could not bear the big brains of his host, and he became a golden finger for his words, and he also experienced the in-depth details of the love between master and apprentice. The two masters and apprentices are nesting in Xianling. They seem to be seriously practicing, but in fact they have been doing something that makes their hearts beat. To the surprise of Song Yan, she lived a long time this time, and lived till the day of ascension. However, naturally, she failed to soar. Although the thunder clouds were rolling on the day when she soared, the thunderstorms showed no sign of falling. Instead, Goyu and Shangxian hugged her and sat on the rooftop of the tree house, stretched out his hand, and placed it on his chest. An air-conditioned heart, which seemed to be made of ice cubes, appeared in his hand. In the surprised eyes of Yanj, he slapped the ice heart into Yanj's chest. Heaven and earth began to collapse and shatter instantly. He smiled at her, smiling warm and nostalgic, opened his mouth, but did not speak. His face was getting old before her, and gradually, shattered into pieces.